On today's show, at first glance, the Hawks roster might be set, but it also might not be set at this point in late August. We'll get into all of what goes into that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2043 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening here in late August. Today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. You can visit FanDuel and the FanDuel app right now today and start planning your future bets now. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. We are also on YouTube, so please subscribe to this podcast and like this podcast as you're watching it right now, and tell your friends about the program. I also want to encourage you to check out the 4 episodes I did last week as I was traveling abroad, actually. That included visits from Glenn Willis of ATL 29, plus Ben Pfeiffer on the NBA draft. Those were all very fun conversations, and I'm still rolling through all kinds of different things in 2000 now with plenty to discuss about the Atlanta Hawks. In fact, there was a transaction that happened while I was away that I kind of gave a topper to one of the podcasts about quickly. But I wanted to begin today's show with N'Faly Dante, and we'll kind of talk about how that fits into the overall scheme of things when it comes to the Hawks roster and the big question about whether the Hawks roster is actually done at this point in late August. So early last week, the Hawks announced that N'Faly Dante had signed with the team. 23-year-old center N'Faly Dante. That came after it was reported by Mike Scotto, good friend of the podcast from Hoops Hype, that he was signing an offer sheet. That was Dante signing an offer sheet with the Hawks. It was a 2-year offer sheet for the two-way restricted free agent that he was. It is pretty rare for a player coming off of a two-way contract to actually get an offer sheet. It's only happened a couple of times in the two-way realm of the NBA the last several seasons. Part of that is that the incumbent team, in this case that would have been the Rockets, is likely to match a reasonable offer for that kind of player. But the Hawks identified, I think purposely so, did Ante Saleh, the Rockets as a team that did not actually have room under the hard cap that they were actually up against to actually match this offer to N'Faly Dante. And they also already have 3 centers on their roster in Şengün, Steven Adams, and old friend Clint Capella, who they're also invested in at a pretty high level. That combination kind of allowed the Hawks to pounce on a young guy that they actually clearly like, that would not have been available to them in a lot of different situations around the league. So it is a 2-year deal. That's interesting. Offer sheets have to be at least 2 years. If you're an offer sheet, basically you're giving that to a player who is a restricted free agent. Only happens then. And people have kind of asked why it wasn't a 1-year deal like a lot of minimums are this time of year. And perhaps the reason for that is that, again, offer sheets have to be multiple seasons. Plus, if you like the guy enough to give him an offer sheet right now, you probably want that a little bit longer if you possibly can. And that kind of talks about the structure of this deal, which is actually quite interesting and what's been reported out there. So it's going to begin this year at the minimum for a second-year player. Dante was a rookie last year with Houston. And the minimum for a second-year player is about $2.05 million. Then it would jump up, as all deals do in this range, to about $2.4 million in year 2, which gets you to the reported figure that Mike Scotto put out there of 2 years and $4.5 million. Now, there's a very, very important wrinkle that's come out in the last couple of days. Bobby Marks of ESPN, their kind of cap expert over there, former Nets executive, etc. If this is true, it makes it even more friendly for the Hawks. Now, I have not seen the official numbers myself. From what I understand, though, Bobby Marks, who works, again, for ESPN primarily, maintained some cap information for Sports Business Classroom, and also shared this reporting through that platform. And as, again, where I am right now on Sunday, I have not been able to kind of verify this independently, but I think it's very likely true for people that I talk to that have seen this reporting from Bobby. Not announced, not confirmed. Keep that in mind. A little bit of a caveat on this. But Bobby reported that Dante's deal is almost entirely non-guaranteed. His report says that Dante's contract is only guaranteed for $85,300 in the first season of the deal, which means it has to match that second season of the deal. It'd be non-guaranteed again for the second season. That's a strange number in a vacuum, but it's also the exact amount that Dante would have gotten from the Rockets if he'd just taken the qualifying offer of a two-way from Houston. So for the player side of things, he gets the same amount of guaranteed money, but he has the chance to make $2 million this year if the Hawks keep him on the roster, whereas his upside financially in Houston would have been a lot lower because it would have been a two-way contract, and those are not going to be sort of capping out at $2 million. So for Dante, it's all upside, basically, on that front. For the Hawks, this gives them more flexibility and, of course, Ante Soleil's favorite word, optionality. If they do not they kind of get Dante in and they don't love what they see in training camp. Let's just say that, for example, they can go ahead and cut him for basically no penalty at all. Like, that's under $100,000 in NBA terms. That's nothing, to be honest with you. If they do like him, as they probably expect to at this point in time, he's locked in for the minimum this year, and then they still have him for a non-guaranteed contract for next season. So for the Hawks, this structure is amazing. Amazing structure. Like, it's not quite the V Krejci contract where we kind of already knew that V could play. It was a 4-year, super team-friendly deal. It isn't quite that. But if Dante is a player that they like, it's a good structure for the Hawks. And for him, he gets to stick around with a little bit higher upside than he would have had in Houston. As for the player himself, Dante will be turning 24 years old in October. Last year was in Houston. Again, he was actually a 5-year player at Oregon in college. I had a bunch of notes on him as a draft prospect a year ago. He was in the 2024 draft. He actually came into basketball pretty late. Actually, didn't play until he was a teenager in high school, but was a 5-star prospect. Big-time athlete, great size. He was not immediately eligible at Oregon, got a kind of a delayed start towards ACL at one point in college. So kind of a slow boil for Dante at the college level, but he's a true center-sized player. 9'3" standing reach, 7'6" wingspan at the combine. That's a big-time center physical specimen. He was an awesome rebounder in college. That shows up actually still now in the NBA/G League film. He shot 82% at the rim his last year in college. That was number 1 in the country that year. That was also present on his G League film last year in Houston. He only played in 4 NBA games with the Rockets. The Rockets were, of course, in win-now mode. He was on a 2-way contract. They didn't really need him to play last year in Houston. He was on a 2-way contract, all that stuff. Also, he was behind Şengün, Steven Adams, Jock Landale, etc. No surprise there. He did play more than 1,100 minutes in the G League, 42 games. So there's actually a decent sample of him playing professional basketball last year in America, and he was really, really good in the G League. 15 points a game on 74% from the field for him. All of that's basically is like a play finisher around the rim, but he's always been good at finishing around the rim with physicality and effectiveness. He's not a good free throw shooter at all. That's not great. It's kind of okay for centers, though, but he's an awesome rebounder. Again, 9.8 rebounds per game last year in only 27 minutes, which is a very, very impressive per minute number. Almost 4 offensive rebounds a game. Awesome factor there. Also 3.2 stocks per game, steals plus blocks. He's a very active, aggressive defender. Creates some havoc on the back line of the defense. I chatted with some people actually from around the league who I trust that are scouts and player personnel folks. And they're definitely more keyed into the G League than I am on a day-to-day basis. And I was told repeatedly that he was one of the best bigs in the G League last year. Full stop. As a rookie. That's not a small thing. Obviously, the NBA is different, but the productivity that he had at the G League level was not empty. He was impactful in the G League. And Houston's G League team, which is Rio Grande, had a plus 6.5 net rating with Dante on the court. And they were much worse than that when he was off the floor. On both ends of the floor, actually. So he's excellent in his kind of ability to kind of help the team push the pace, and the Hawks want to play fast. Part of that is, again, great rebounder. That's a huge factor. He also pass the ball quickly off of the glass. He also generates those blocks and steals to kind of get you going and to kind of change ends quickly. He can run. He's an impressive physical specimen at center. Durability is a question mark for sure. That was part of the reason why he didn't get drafted a year ago, but he actually was able to play basically the full year in the G League, which is a encouraging kind of sample size thing for you. So for me, overall, I would say N'Faly Dante is the kind of guy that if he's on a 2-way contract with you, you are doing backflips at the minimum. And for me, again, a reportedly a non-guaranteed minimum, it's a really good kind of bet. If it doesn't work, no downside at all for the Hawks. If it does work, he becomes your 3rd, 4th center that you kind of need on your roster. It's been a topic for a long time now this summer that the Hawks really only have the 2 centers. So you have Okongwu and Porzingis. Then you have Moguet, who can kind of play center, but is kind of more of a 4-5 combo. And there really wasn't much else behind them. I've been saying for a while that they probably needed to sign somebody else at center. And Dante isn't like a finished product, but he is a guy that I think they can play if they have to, some minutes at center, who will rebound for you and do the big man things well, which is definitely important what the Hawks want to do this year as they're trying to win. All right. With that said, there's more to come on this podcast about Caleb Houstan, also some news on him, plus the Hawks roster and what might happen in the future when it comes to whether it's actually set right now. We'll get into that and more in just one moment. August 26th is FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday football fans who lived for bold predictions and preseason hunches, and for just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you the chance to have deals on NFL season predictions, whether you're calling for MVP award winners, eyeing long shot division winners, or just ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before Week 1 even kicks off. This is your moment at FanDuel. For example, take a flyer right now in the MVP race. For me, that means like the quarterbacks, of course, Joe Burrow, interesting value, Patrick Mahomes. If you want to go longer shots, longer odds, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Penix, Drake May, etc. If someone wants to go nuts there on a long shot, feel free. Also, you can crown your champion right now in August. I think the Chiefs are always good value to reach the Super Bowl. They're 8-1 to win the whole thing this year. With Mahomes there, they're always in the mix. Baltimore is the betting favorite. They're always in the mix as well. And if you're a Falcons fan like me, they're 60-1 right now at FanDuel. Or parlay division winners together as well, or dark horses. If you're a Falcons fan like I am, I think actually NFC South is pretty interesting this year, to be honest with you. I also like the Jags at plus 290 in the AFC South. Visit FanDuel and the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets right now, because Futures Day is only one day and one day only. It's August 26th, one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Right, and before I get to some more stuff on the Hawks, the folks at Locked On have an important request. They want to hear from you as well. Locked On put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and actually make your podcasts that you like to listen to and watch even better. This is actually your chance to give them some feedback, what they actually like, what you don't like, answer some questions about the advertising process at Locked On as well. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will actually be entered for a chance to win up to one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that is lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you in advance for helping us out. All right. And Caleb Houstan's deal is finally done. Yes, finally done. This has been a running kind of subplot / joke for a long time. But if anybody missed this, about a month, actually 5 weeks ago or so, Mike Scott reported back in July that the Hawks were going to sign Caleb Houstan to a 1-year deal. That was confirmed by me and others back then. I did a whole segment about this on July 18th on this podcast about Caleb Houstan joining the team. But then it wasn't announced. And people were understandably confused by that. I get it. I tried to explain at that point in time that a 1-year minimum deal not being announced is not out of the ordinary. It's pretty normal. Nothing was going to change, be worried about, or anything like that. But there were some conspiracy theories that were cooking out there. I answer questions about this basically every day over the last month. I get it. But the Hawks just quietly announced this on Tuesday afternoon last week that Houstan was signed. Now, the big thing that's worth keeping in mind that hasn't really changed but is now official is that the deal is not guaranteed. It's similar to Dante, not exactly the same. So it's different setup in a lot of ways. So Keith Smith first reported this. It's an Exhibit 10 contract for Caleb Houstan. I mentioned a couple times on this podcast in July that I was hearing it might not be fully guaranteed, but I wasn't 100% sure about that. I'll be honest about that. But until Keith got that, and now I can confirm that reality. It's an Exhibit 10 contract for Houstan. Without going crazy deep on this, Exhibit 10s are non-guaranteed deals that give the team all kinds of choices. It's not technically a guarantee amount in the CBA language, but functionally, $85,000, actually $85,300 is the max guarantee for Exhibit 10. That's what Houston's going to be getting from the Hawks, no matter what. The Hawks, though, can cut him before the season starts and then not owe him any more money after that if they don't want to keep him. Also, they have his G League rights. He can be converted to a two-way if he's eligible for one, which I believe he is. There's some back and forth there. The Hawks actually don't have a two-way spot open. They can create one if they wanted to. There's some flexibility here with Caleb Houstan. But the big thing is he's not guaranteed money-wise, which he's not guaranteed to be on the roster at this point. I will come back to this in a second. I would still say Houstan is the front runner to be on the roster. Same with Dante. Both guys, I would say, are more likely than not to be on the roster, but not guaranteed at all. And that the fact that the deal is not guaranteed in an Exhibit 10 fashion gives them flexibility. Again, optionality, flexibility. On the player side, Again, I did a whole segment like this back in mid-July, but not everyone listens to every show. I get that. So a quick overview if you missed this. Houstan is a 6'7", 6'8" wing, 6'11" wingspan. First 3 years were in Orlando. He's 22 years old, about the same age as Dyson Daniels, so he's definitely still draft age, even though he's entering year 4 of his career. His big appeal is his shooting. He has shot 38.5% on 11 attempts per 100 possessions over the last 2 years. Big sample, high-level shooter. That is his primary value in the league right now. Defensively, he has improved, still has some work to do, some physicality to add. He's a very skinny guy. He has good length, kind of good 2-3 length. Not clear how much he can play the 3 defensively, but certainly a guy that has a body who can shoot the ball and give you some depth at a position where the Hawks have definitely been trying to add shooting all summer long. Overall, I like the signing at the minimum. He's young. He has a real skill with the shooting. It's been a priority for the Hawks again all summer long again. But I got some reaction that was kind of strange to me. That was kind of negative about the Hawks making this Exhibit 10 deal. I think maybe it was confusion or whatever. But for some people, it was they didn't like this for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, because just to be very, very pointed and clear about this, getting Caleb Houstan to sign this contract, Exhibit 10, instead of a guaranteed deal is actually unambiguously good for the Hawks. There is zero downside to having him on this deal versus the minimum. It's positive news overall. It's negative news for Caleb Houstan. So if you want him to have guaranteed money, obviously it's not great for him. But for the team, this is obviously, and again, very clearly good. He's either going to be on the team on the minimum, as many expected, or they can cut him, pay him nothing basically, very, very little in NBA terms, and then presumably have a better use of the roster spot if they're going to have a reason to go ahead and move on from him. So if he comes to camp and they don't love what they see, all right, Caleb, shake hands, we'll go separate ways. If not, he gets to be on the roster. So long story short, it's really about that key phrase, it's optionality. We'll get into this more in a second when it comes to the whole roster, but both Dante and Houstan are in kind of the same spot now where they kind of have to earn it a little bit more than guys usually do in training camp. Houstan is a little bit different that he's already been on an NBA deal the last 3 years. Dante's come off a 2-way, but I think I'm pretty clear, honestly, that both of these guys are NBA players. I think Houston's proven more than Dante has. I think they're both worthy of these spots. If nothing changes right now and they're both guaranteed for the season at minimums, I'm totally fine with both contracts. I like both guys. But again, from a team standpoint, which is what we cover on the podcast most of the time, this is good. You want the ability, if you don't like something, to be able to get out of it with no pain and have flexibility. And the Hawks now do have that with both Dante and with Houstan. So where does it leave the roster? It's a question everybody's been asking me. We'll get into that, plus some EuroBasket and much more in just one moment. This is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table for you. Think about the last time you actually had an urgent need in your own life, perhaps for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person that you called didn't answer, did you actually wait on them? You probably didn't wait on them. You probably moved on to something else, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system, and it's built to streamline customer communications, all from an app on your phone or on your computer. OpenPhone lets you manage all of your business calls and texts from a single app, and they have the shared inbox feature that's actually a game changer for you. Your whole team jumped into a single conversation instantly without missing a beat at all. And their OpenPhone AI agent as well can handle calls after hours to answer common questions and capture any leads so you actually never miss a customer at all. And OpenPhone is also offering my listeners 20% off on your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's 20% off for 6 months, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with different service, at OpenPhone, they'll actually port them over for you for no extra charge whatsoever. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, so where does the roster come into play here? And the question that everyone keeps asking about, are they done, basically? And the long and short of it is the Hawks could be done right now. It's August 24th as I'm recording this podcast. They could be done with their whole roster right now. I do think they're going to sign some more Exhibit 10s to training camp contracts. I think Kobe Johnson's probably going to get one of those. There's some intel on that about Lamont Butler maybe getting one back in the summer. They're bringing some more training camp bodies, but for the most part, the permanent roster, there's some different options in play because again, they have 13 guys on guaranteed contracts. Now they have Dante and Houstan on non-guaranteed deals. at least 14 players have to be under contract. So if you cut them both, which is a possibility, they have to sign someone else, or trade for somebody else to be on the roster. Or you keep one of the two, or you keep both. Those are kind of the three pathways at this point in time. Keep one, keep two, cut both, and if you do the cut both option, sign or acquire someone else. Because Houstan and Dante are non-guaranteed, the Hawks still have the ability right now, by the cap and by the tax rules, to sign anyone available for the minimum. Anybody available without going to the tax while keeping either of Houstan or Dante alongside them. So, for example, the most nuclear example, they could cut Dante and sign Al Horford to the minimum. Horford's been in the league forever. His minimum is the biggest number it could possibly be. They'd still be under the tax line doing that. Horford's number is actually more than that he'd actually make on the minimum, but the league subsidizes the difference between the minimum, which is about $2.3 million, and what he actually would get. So keep that in mind, nitty-gritty stuff, but they have the ability to sign anybody they want to. And by the way, everyone keeps asking about this. Horford's still a free agent. I get that. Everyone in the league believes that they're just waiting on Kuminga in Golden State. There's a stare down happening there, obviously. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I would have a standing offer to Al Horford. If the Hawks were to have that offer be out there and he were to sign it, cut Dante if you have to. That's fine with me. Might sound cruel, but it's fine. Horford's the only way that they would cut Dante, honestly, right now, if it was me, would be to sign Horford because they need a center. And they don't really have a lot of available centers that are great. So that's one. Houstan is a little bit less clear. The bar for me is still pretty reasonably high for players to actually sign ahead of Dante or Houstan because those guys are pretty good and they're pretty young. Like, for instance, Horford for sure. I would sign Malcolm Brogdon while cutting either of them pretty obviously. But everybody else is kind of like not as clear. Like, there are some guys that are probably better in a vacuum that are older, but the pickings are slim right now on the market. I've gotten questions about Malik Beasley a lot in the last few days because it was reported that he's no longer a target of the federal gambling investigation. He's not been like formally cleared. He's just not being charged with anything right now. And it's been out there that kind of some teams have been contacting him in the last couple of days. I have not heard anything about the Hawks at all. Obviously, Beasley was a valuable player last year. He's a big-time shooter. He's from the Atlanta area as well. But it does not feel like a Hawks move to me because of the off-court stuff and also because he's a shooting guard primarily, and they have already Dyson Daniels, Alexander Walker, and Luke Kennard paying like real money to all three of those guys. No, not a big role for him. Like, yeah, if Beasley wanted to sign for the minimum, like, would he help the team? Yes. I just don't know if the Hawks are going to get in the mix with that. And if you're Beasley, this is the short version of this, but he should want to go somewhere else. Like, there are definitely teams in the league that would give him a bigger role than the Hawks would. So I get the local connection. I get that he's a famous player. He's a good player as well. But I'd be surprised if that were to happen at this point in time. As a refresher, though, for the roster, the way that I think about it right now is that it's still a work in progress, even though it could be done. They have the 7 starters, which I keep saying the top 7 are very clear to me in some order. It's Trey, it's Dyson, Alexander Walker, Risha Shea, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, and Porzingis. Then they have Luke Kennard as the 8th guy in most constructs. You got Mo Gay as the 9th guy. I went through this a couple weeks ago. Beat Krejci. Those top 10 are all like proven NBA rotation players, basically. 7 starters and then 3 guys who are rotation guys in Kennard, Gay, and Krejci. Then you have Kobe Buffkin, who has the clearest path to playing time of the guys who are outside the top 10 because he's a point guard and he's his 3rd season and all that stuff, first-round pick. Then you have Asa Newell and Nikola Juricic, who are the 2 like totally unproven young guys who are on guaranteed deals, though. We'll see how that goes. I like both those guys to varying degrees. Then you have the 2-way guys. You have Jacob Toppin, Keaton Wallace, Eli Njai. All of those guys can play for you right now, especially Toppin and Wallace if you kind of have to. They're older guys on those deals. And then you have the Dante and Houstan factors who are on the dividing line. But for me, like, neither of them are the worst players on the team. Like, I think pretty clearly Dante and Houstan are better than Juricic right now. It's just that he's signed to a guaranteed deal and those guys aren't. So they're less certain to me. But anyway, that's for later on. Basically, again, the answer is unsatisfying, but I'll never lie to you on the podcast. The answer is they could stay put or they couldn't. And that's the question that I keep getting, and I'll keep answering it that same way until we know more. But as long as there are guys out there who they could sign that might be better, and by that I mean like Horford, Brogdon, DeAnthony Melton, pick your player that could be more interesting, it's not done because they have left themselves one more time the optionality to move on from Dante or Houstan if they want to. From here, the next kind of key date for the Hawks is Media Day, which is not until Monday, September 29th. So we're about 5 weeks away as I'm recording this podcast right now. Training camp opens that day, basically. We're getting there. It's also been a little bit more than 5 weeks away since Summer League ended. So we're basically a little bit past the midpoint of the actual dead zone. The dead zone in the NBA, generally speaking, is the end of Summer League until training camp opens. We're like 55% of the way through. So keep that in mind as well. And there's still, by the way, an interesting event on the horizon, which I'll end the podcast with today. So you might have heard about this already. I've referenced it a few times on the podcast, but EuroBasket is coming up this week. There have also been a ton of like warm-up games, exhibitions, friendlies. I know France had one today on Sunday, and Ricochet actually played very well in that game. I saw some highlights of that and some clips of that. He played very well by all accounts. But EuroBasket is basically the European Championships, and it begins on this Wednesday, and runs all the way through September the 14th. 24 teams in the field, 4 groups of 6. Every team plays every team in the group. So every team is guaranteed to play 5 games. Then it's after that, pool plays over, knockout round, etc. The group plays until September 4th. From a Hawks standpoint, there are 3 guys playing in this, which is why it matters to Hawks fans only. Porzingis for Latvia, beat Krejci for Czechia or Czech Republic, and then also Ricochet, who's playing for France. Wednesday, we'll see the first game for Porzingis and Krejci. Thursday is Ricochet's opener against Belgium for France. We do not know if they're going to all play in every game, but if they do play in every game, and by them, I'm saying one more time, Porzingis, Krejci, Ricochet, if they all play, at least one of them will be playing in a game every day from August 27th until September the 4th. So more than a week straight of a Hawks player playing in a game that they are trying to play and trying to learn some more information, just basketball to watch. 9 days in a row. So even some of these games are tough to watch in America for broadcast reasons, also time reasons, but there is basketball on to learn things about all these guys. In particular, I would say Porzingis and Ricochet. Porzingis, to see where he is physically, he's looked good to me in all the tune-up games that I've seen so far, but obviously Hawks fans getting a new look at one of their best players, newly arrived player, a little bit of a sneak preview for him. And then Ricochet is looking bigger, looking more physical, and hopefully that year 2 jump for a young player is will be advertised, I would say, during this time. So I will not be covering every game on this feed, but I'll have to takeaways at times. Might have guests on the podcast talk about what they've seen from EuroBasket, and I'll be watching as I can throughout. So again, Wednesday is when things get started. You got Vit and Czech Republic against Portugal, and then Porzingis at Latvia against Turkey on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. Much more basketball to come on the horizon in the coming days. With that said, that's all I have on today's podcast. I am back in the saddle for regular podcasts, back in my home as you're watching this podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube. But please subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. I'll have more player capsules on the way with Glenn Willis. I'll have more offseason content, more guests come on the podcast. Again, I want to plug last week's shows. There were good ones with Glenn and with Ben Pfeiffer. People were asking me why Ben was on the podcast. Look, the Hawks have a very, very juicy potential draft pick from the Pelicans, and the draft never stops. So that was a fun chat as well. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll see you all next time.